cold never bothered me anyway. Did you know that your heart has an electromagnetic field that is 5,000 times stronger than the electromagnetic field in your brain? It impacts every cell in your body, and it can be felt by others up to 5 to 10 feet away. That's bananas, right? Well, it's a claim that's made in The Energy Bus, a great book that we're going to talk about right now. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike. I am a former teacher, a former administrator. I am the founder and owner of a company called Peer Driven PD. And what we do with this content, these videos, emails, and newsletters, is that we interview and talk with other administrators around the country, as well as top performers in other professions, and try to bring valuable skills that you can use just to become a little bit better at your job, because it's a tough one. We also are pretty big on community because we know your job can also be very lonely. So welcome, we're glad that you're here. So today we're reviewing the book, The Energy Bus by Jon Gordon. It's a resource that's already been used by a lot of schools. I've talked with administrators that have used it with their staff, with their leadership staff, their admin team, their teacher leader group, or some that even have used it with their entire teaching staff. And we're going to interview one principal next week from Florida who is using it with their teachers and also her students. So sit tight for that. It's going to be awesome. The main goal today for this video, however, is to briefly review the plot of the book, give our insights about what we liked, what we didn't like about it, and also give you an outline of what chapters to cover when based on how much time you have and your staffing needs. The Energy Bus is written by Jon Gordon, who's a pretty prolific writer and speaker on a lot of topics like leadership and teamwork and culture. He's worked with professional sports teams. He's worked with big companies, with universities. He's also done quite a bit of specific work with K-12 administrators and teachers. So although he's not an educator himself, he's pretty familiar with this world. As far as the book itself is concerned, it calls itself a fable, which is kind of fun and lighthearted, but it's not about talking animals. It's about a middle manager at a light bulb manufacturing company named George. And we open the story finding George going out to his car on a Monday morning, and we notice that he has a flat tire. Not only that, he doesn't have a spare tire, and to make things worse, he's been doing pretty poorly at work lately. He manages a small team of individuals who have become quite toxic and negative. I'm sure none of you can relate to that situation, and so he's going to be late for an important meeting, and he's pretty stressed. We also find that when he goes to his wife to ask for a ride for the day, she's not able to because she's pretty overwhelmed herself, and life at home is not that good. In fact, his marriage is on the rocks, and he's not too far from a potential divorce. So because he has a flat tire and his wife can't give him a ride, he's forced to ride the city bus to work, something he has, I don't think, ever done in his professional career. And this is where it gets really interesting. We're introduced to the bus driver named Joy, who is pretty appropriately named, I think, and passengers on the bus who ride every day who will play a role in George's story. Now, we also find out that the flat tire that George had is much worse than the flat tire. There's a bigger issue with his car. He's going to be without it for 2 weeks, so he's going to be stuck riding the bus for 2 weeks, which coincides with a big product launch that he's responsible for in 10 days, 2 weeks or so. That's, 10 working days.
Hang on. I'm just checking your math on that. Yes, I got the same thing.
And if he doesn't get it right, he's going to be fired. So he's stuck with this cast of characters every day. He sees that as a big nuisance initially, but it's something that will end up changing his life. Now, while this book is not explicitly for educators, I think any educator could benefit from it, specifically school leaders, teacher leaders, or administrators. But it also deals with the perspectives of the employees themselves, which teachers may find important. So in effect, you could use this with just your leadership team or your whole staff. Now, as I said before, this book is a fable, which is part of its appeal. It's very short, it's funny, it's a quick read. I read it for the first time in about 2.5 hours one afternoon, and I'm not the world's fastest reader. And this book is pretty clever in how it's set up. As I said, it follows George as he rides the bus each day, and the bus driver Joy has 10 rules for the ride of your life posted on her bus. Now, George learns a new rule every day, and then we follow him into a very toxic work environment and see how those rules apply in his work setting. Sometimes it works and George has a really good day and things kind of start to turn around, and sometimes it fails miserably and it's sort of a train wreck, which is quite true to life, I'd say, and one of the parts that I like most about the book. But before we go down that road, let's talk about a couple of things that I was not a huge fan of. To start with, the book is 32 chapters long. It's in a story format that works well, but chapter 14, right in the middle, is kind of like an infomercial in the middle of a great movie. You're asked to go to a website as the reader and send friends an email with an e-ticket to get on your bus, which kind of means to get on with the vision of your life, which is fine in theory, but it has promotional ads on the website. It just feels a little bit forced and salesy and cheesy, and I was not a fan of that. I feel like this happening right in the middle of the book kind of sucks you out of the story and makes you feel like, did they magically find a way to put commercials into books now? My second qualm about the book is that there's a lot of talk about energy in the book, which I know it's in the title, but it just felt kind of vague and overused, and there's so many different connotations with that word. It can feel kind of woo-woo and new agey to some. But really, I understand why Jon Gordon did it. Now, he explicitly earlier in the book says that he uses the word energy as kind of a bucket for the concepts of trust, faith, enthusiasm, happiness, joy. Is that all of them? Oh, and purpose. Now, this choice kind of makes sense by Gordon, and it is somewhat effective because you can't pull out that litany of words every time you're trying to describe something, but I feel like it just became a little bit overused, and you have to remember as the reader that when you read that word energy over and over and over again, it actually stands for something specific. And those really are my only two criticisms of the book, which I was kind of surprised by. To be totally honest with you, I went in kind of a little bit skeptical and wanting to be annoyed by this book. Now, I'm really a very positive person in general, but being a small business owner and being someone who's been through business school, I've read so many business books that were oversimplified and trite that I really expected the same from this book, and I didn't get it, which was quite nice. It was very true to life, dealt with real heavy issues, and gave really good advice. And we're going to talk more about what I liked about this book and how you can apply it to your book study with your school staff right now. We'll talk about that now. So it's the beginning of 2022, and I know the last couple years have just been an absolute doozy for everyone. I don't have a new way to say that. It's just a fact, right? I think that this book is an important book for a time such as this, mainly because it feels honest and it feels real and it feels like it's interacting with real emotion. We encounter real negativity from George, from his wife, from his team at work as they're overstressed and trying to make a terrible situation turn out okay. But the characters aren't left in those situations. They actually confront a lot of those issues, sort of debate their way through them, and then find ways to support one another and move forward. And for administrators specifically, I feel like this book could be a breath of fresh air. We see how George interacts with everything from negativity to outright insubordination with his staff, and we are in the room as they have those conversations, the tough conversations, and move through them. We also see the toll that the job takes on George's family and the stress that he has about his marriage potentially collapsing and what he's going to do to try to salvage that relationship while dealing with the stresses and performing well at work. My thought is that any leadership team could learn a lot from this book. If you're a principal who is burned out and just starting to go crazy, this book could be a real breath of fresh air. If you're a very buoyant leader and you're just not feeling the effects of all this right now, but you have an AP or a dean that is very overwhelmed, reading this book as a leadership team, I feel like could also be a big shot in the arm. Also, at the end of the book, it gives concrete steps to create an action plan for how you're going to implement your vision, which also is kind of a bit outside of the story and might feel a little bit cheesy, but it could be an effective tool to work through from a strategic leadership perspective. Now, would I read this with my entire teaching staff? I think that I probably would. Specifically, the latter chapters 26 and 27, go into a lot of detail about how to authentically care for and genuinely love your employees, which sounds a little bit gushy, but they address it in a way that's very endearing and actually gives a lot of hope. Here's a brief passage that I was actually surprised to find in a book like this, but wanted to share with you for a number of reasons. Jack stepped in and said, "I know it's corny to talk about love in the business world, George, but she's right. All any of us really want is to be loved, and all your employees really want is your love." George thought of Jose and realized they were onto something. That's what it's all about, George. Jose and your team want to know that you care about them. They want to know that you are concerned about their future and welfare. They need to know that you love them. It can't be just about you and your job. It has to be about them. And scene. Now that's kind of a lot of love talk for a work setting, and it might make some of you feel kind of uncomfortable, but that's sort of the beauty of this story, is that George raises that objection immediately after this passage. George is usually the one questioning and doubting the concepts that are brought up by Joy and the other passengers as they come up, and you feel like, okay, this isn't just an oversimplified story with a very pat answer. There's a debate going on here, and we see a more complex solution unfold. Now, in terms of planning and format of this book, it doesn't really lend itself to reading 1 or 2 chapters at a time. Some of them are very short, some of them are a little bit longer. None of them take more than about 10 minutes to read. but it's not super intuitive on where the rules and concepts are going to land. But in the notes of this video, we have provided a suggested breakdown of the chapters based on where the rules fall, where the topics are covered, and the amount of time that you might want to spend. So we've given you a suggested breakdown for like a 4-month schedule, something for half that amount of time, and then a sprint schedule if you wanted to do something really, really fast with just your leadership team. And to be honest, you could cover this with a small team in as little as a weekend if you needed to. So I realize that letter grades are kind of antiquated, but if I was going to give this book a grade, I think I would give it an A-. It's a fun, easy read that will brighten the most encouragement-resistant individuals, and I think the very few drawbacks are outweighed by the many merits of this book. So that's that, folks. Thanks for joining me. If you have other comments, maybe in how you've used this book successfully with your staff or other books you'd like to be reviewed, leave a note in the comments or email us at hello@puredrivenpd.com. It'd also do us a huge favor if you'd hit subscribe to this channel. You also get notified about new videos as they come out. Again, we're going to be releasing a video within the next couple of weeks with an administrator who has used this book with her staff and students. Also, feel free to pop over to our website and sign up for our newsletter. Have a great day, folks. Hang in there. You're doing good work. Keep it up, and we'll talk soon.